Good morning. Today's Thursday, the 17th day of Iyar. It is also the 32nd day of the Omer. We counted last night, and tonight is Lag BaOmer. It's going to be the special day of Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Cohen. He's the author of the Zohar, the teachings of the mystical parts of the Torah, which prepares us for Mashiach, and that learning of the Tanya, what we do every day, is part of this revelation of the Pnimius HaTorah, the inner part of the Torah. In the Zohar, it says that with this book, with the holy book of the Zohar, with this Pnimius HaTorah, the Jewish people are going to come out, we are all going to come out of the exile with compassion, berachamim, in a good way, in a positive way. And because this is the teachings of the Pnimius HaTorah, the mystical part of the Torah, the esoteric part of the Torah, it reveals the goodness of God, things that are concealed. And this is indeed also what we're talking about in this chapter in the Tanya. In chapter 48 that we are concluding today, Alter Rebbe talks about the inner part of the concealed godliness in this world, that God creates this world in a concealed manner, and he has to do it that way because otherwise we wouldn't be existing. It would be too overwhelming. It would be nullified in Hashem's existence. So that's why Hashem conceals. And, sometimes we can use examples. Alter Rebbe is going to bring over here in this chapter, in today's lesson, Alter Rebbe is going to explain the concept of the God's thoughts is not like our thoughts. And that God is in this world by knowing this world. When we know something, by us, humans, there are two separate things. You have three separate things, actually. You have the person, you have the concept that you know, and you have the intellect, through which you know. You know a concept using your intellect. There is you, there is your intellect, and there is the concept. But when we're talking about God, it says, my thoughts are not like your thoughts. Hashem knows us because he is us. And this is in the same time, Hashem is concealed. You don't see it. And we used yesterday, the Alter Rebbe gave the example to understand this concept, that Hashem is in this world. It's called Memalek Olam, filling this world on the one hand. And there's also the aspect of Hashem, which is Soivev Kol Almin, encompassing the world. The Alter Rebbe used an example and to understand what does it mean when you encompass something, you're surrounding it. So you use the example of having an image in your mind. Whatever image you have an image, you look at a cup, you look at a book, the image of the book is in your head, in your mind. Obviously not the physical book. The image of the book is in your mind, and every detail of it is in your mind. And the same thing, he says, by Hashem knowing us, the only difference is that God is literally in us, except we don't see it. It is from his perspective, from God's perspective, every little detail is in us. From our perspective, we don't see it. Another example that can be used to understand the concept of encompassing power and the power that goes more inside. This is the idea of the will of a person and versus the logic. Meaning, for example, if a person, when you want something, when you have a desire, let's say, to understand a certain subject, so your desire of understanding that subject, you want everything. But your desire is not in the details. It's not in the details. It's encompassing it. And yet, it affects also the logic. The logic is in the details. When you actually get down to it and to know and to understand something, then you go down into the details. Now, just a second. So it says also in the Hasidus explains that when a person has a desire on a certain subject, then understanding the logic is going to be able to understand it better. You can take two subjects. You have the same person, the same intellectual ability. But if there's a subject that he has a desire to understand, the desire, the ratzon, the will, works on his logic to be able to understand it better. Try it. If you'll study a subject that you enjoy, you will see that you get better understanding. And why is it? What it means is because the will power has an effect. It is an encompassing power. The will doesn't know the details. You don't want a specific detail of the math that you're working into understanding the subject. You want the general thing. But it has an effect on the inner part, on the logic itself. So here it says the Alter Rebbe that Hashem, God, is in this world in a form of pervading in the world and in clothing itself in the world, and that is after the contraction. But this is only to make the form and the shapes of the creation. But the very being of Hashem, the very essence of God, the encompassing light of Hashem, is in here, but it's from our perspective, it's not here. It's only from God's perspective that it's in here in every little detail. It's a little deep, this subject. Let's keep, and the whole thing is, as we said yesterday, the whole thing is in order for us to understand the greatness and the length that God goes down to get us into existence. And in turn, this should bring out in us also a feeling of appreciation and love to Hashem himself. So let's look inside. L'mashal, says the Alter Rebbe, Kadu ha'aretz halezu. For example, he says, case in point, is this globe, this earth. His knowledge encompasses the entire diameter of the globe. Together with all that it's in it, and its deepest interior to its lowest depth. Akoil bepoil mamash. All in actual reality. He says in actual reality because this is versus the example that we used yesterday. When you have something in an image in your mind, then every little detail, it says, also is in your mind, but it's not it's not literally in your mind. It's only in your image. But when we're talking about God's knowledge, which His knowledge brings it into creation, God's knowledge is literally, Hashem is literally in actual reality, is in every little detail. Sheharei, why must we say so? Because Yediyah zu hi chayus kol oivich kador haaretz kuloi. For this knowledge constitutes the vitality of the whole spherical thickness of the earth. And its creation ex nihilo, something from nothing. That, how is it created? From the fact that Hashem knows it. He knows it, and that's what creates it. רק שלא היה מסעווה כמו שהוא עתו, בעל גבול ותכליס, וחייס מועטס מאוד. Except, it says, however, it would not have been come into being as it is now, as a finite and limited thing with an exceedingly minute degree of vitality sufficient for the categories of inorganic matter and vegetations. So, meaning, in order to have this being created to such a low level, a reduced level, becoming inanimate object and vegetations, things that you don't see the life even, such minute level of light, how does it happen? Were it not for the world being created through the many powerful contractions, which have those powerful contractions which have condensed the light and the vitality that is clothed in the orb of the earth. So it is so as to animate it and to sustain it in its finite and limited status. And in the categories of inorganic and vegetable matter alone, meaning to reduce it to the level, which is this, those are the two lowest categories of creatures in this world, the inanimate objects and the vegetations, compared to animals and humans, that we see more and more life. So again, so this is in order to create it into this being, Hashem had to reduce his light to create it. But all of this is just to reduction in order to have this forms of creations, of creatures. But his knowledge, however, which is united with his essence and being. And here again we say, Hashem knows it, and that's why it's there. That's why it exists. And he says, but the knowledge, God's knowledge is one with God himself. And he quotes from the Rambam, and it says, Ki hu amada, vehu hayodea, vehu hayadua. He is the knowledge, he is the knower, and he is the known. As we said earlier, we have, in knowledge, we have three things. We have the person, you have the subject, and you have the intellect. By God, it's all one. By knowing him, he knows everything. Do you understand it? No, I don't understand it either. And in fact, he's going to say that that's impossible to understand, because we are only thinking in human terms. In human terms, there's no such condition. So continues, the Alter Rebbe says, and knowing himself, as it were, he knows all created beings. Though not with a knowledge that is external to himself, like the knowledge of a human being. Because all of the created beings are derived from his true reality. The Dover says the Alter Rebbe, quoting from the Rambam, Ein bi'echoles ha'odom la'asigoi al doye. This thing is not within the power of human beings to comprehend it clearly, and so on. Now, before we get to the note, let's we're going to go to what the Alter Rebbe concludes, and then we'll go back to the note. And it basically concludes like this. Says this knowledge, being that this is part of the Ein Sof, therefore, this is not considered mislabeshes, enclosed in the globe, in the earth. Shubal gvul v'tachlis. The earth is limited. It is surrounding, it is encompassing, encircling it. And again, when we're saying encircling, it doesn't mean that he's above and outside of it, he's inside. Even though this knowledge embraces itself, its entire thickness and interior in actual reality. And in fact, this brings it into existence from something from nothing, as explained elsewhere. And we're going to go back to the note that the Alter Rebbe says. So he quoted the Rambam. We'll say it outside and then we read it inside. He quoted the Rambam saying that by God, Hu Amada, Hu Ayadea, Hu Ayadua. He is the knowledge, and he is the one who knows, and he is the subject. So when the Rambam said this, there were some sages who disagreed with this understanding of the Rambam, namely the Maharal of Prague. He was one of them, who said, how could you say but God that he is the knowledge? How could you limit God into a concept of knowledge? Knowledge is a thing. When we say Hashem, we don't say Aseichel Baruch Hu, the intellect blessed be. We say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One blessed be He. What does the holy mean? Holy means separated, elevated, aloof. And when we say so, the Maharal, he said that what the Rambam says, that he is the knowledge, is in a way limiting Hashem into knowledge. And so the Chassidus here, the Alter Rebbe says that the Rambam, the Maharal has a good point. However, what the Rambam says is also true. And what the Rambam says is true after what we call the Tzimtzumim. After Hashem contracted his light, as the Arizal brings the concept of contraction, as we explained in the last few days, after the contraction of the light, then we can say that Hashem, once Hashem limited his light into the spheres, into the light, into vessels, forming the concept of knowledge, then we can say that he is the knowledge. And obviously above, Hashem is, God himself is way, way above it, above knowledge, above understanding. This is the point that the Alter Rebbe makes here in the note. Let's see it inside. As the Rambam of blessed memory is written, that God is the knowledge, knower and known. And the scholars of Kabbalah agreed with his view, like it is known from stated by the Pardes from Rabbi Moshe Cordovero of blessed memory. It is also in accord with the Kabbalah of our master Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Arizal. Besoid hatzimtzumim veislapshus oirois bekelim. This is in the mystery, meaning the doctrine of contraction that we mentioned earlier, the doctrine of contraction, and the clothing of the light of the sephiros in the vessels of the sephiros, as has been explained previously in chapter 2, Perik Beis. So this meaning, as we explained, that this is the meaning of the what the Rambam says is true after the tzimtzumim, after the contractions. And so then we can say this concept that Hashem is the known, Hashem is the knowledge, and the knower. So this is, now that we understand this, we understand the concept that Hashem is in us. This is, as we say in the Tehillim, goes against the whole understanding of the way the world views God. Like we say, there's a verse in the Tehillim, it says, Rom al kol goyim Hashem, al hashamayim kavoidei. God is above the goyim, the nations. His covered, his glory is on shamayim, but in heaven. So it says that the Talmud says that this is the way the goyim, the world views God, is that God is spiritual. God is above. He's not in the earth, in the little details, in the little fly, in the tiny little wing, in the little ant. No. But the way Yiddishkeit, the way Judaism views God, is Mi Kashem Elokeinu. What continues the verse? Who is like God? Amagbi Lashavas, that he raises up to sit up high. Amashpili Lirois Bashamayim Uva'aretz, but he lowers himself also to see in the heaven and in the earth equally. That Hashem really is in here and in every little detail equally. From our perspective, we don't see it. Sometimes we get a little blink, we'll get a little glimmer, a little spark revealed to us. For example, when you see things happening by divine providence, you wanted to do something and we call it coincidence. Just happened to be this person, and you find that the person and you made a deal or something. Those are things when we think about it, we reveal hashgacha pratis, get divine providence. So within the nature, we reveal godliness. This is our job. Our job is to find and to look and to see the godliness. Sometimes you have an image in your mind, and you don't realize behind the image is a whole different image. I was looking today in the shul this morning. There was a gentleman that I go for the past year. Every day he's there in the shul, and every day he was wearing a mask. And I look at what I only saw from just the eyes, from the bottom of the eyes. I never saw him. And in my mind, I pictured an image of that person in a certain way that I pictured in my mind. And today was for the first time I see the guy without a mask. I didn't ask him why, but I assume maybe he took the vaccine or something. But he was without a mask. And apparently it was a different image, not the image that I had in my mind. Hashem conceals himself. We form a certain image. Our job is to find the real image, the real image of God. This is the end of today's shir. Thank you so much for joining. And Bezrat Hashem, tonight, Lag BaOmer, we're making a big celebration for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. You're welcome to join us in the Chabad house. So nice barbecue and fire and a celebration of this great holy day. It's a very, very special day. Please feel free to share these classes and subscribe and click notification. All the best, and any question we can take now.